And hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Edfields Podcast. Today is really, really exciting, actually, because the team decided to do something slightly different. Today, we have a live audience, and so please give it up for yourselves. Yeah. Not sure if our viewers or listeners can hear the live audience, but yeah, we have a room full of, young people, many of whom are business owners and are solving some of the continent's biggest problems, right? And so today's topic is really around exploring legalities, governance, compliance when it comes to startups here in Ghana and beyond. Next thing I wanted us to talk about, which is governance, right? And how startups should approach governance, even if it's very, very early on. Like, how do you think we should be looking at governance? Because, the reality is, very early on as a startup, you have many other priorities.
Yeah.
Building your, especially if you're a tech startup, building your product, getting your product out there, getting it tested, getting, your first set of paying customers. People barely think about the legalities and, setting up a board and directors and all of these things. And frankly speaking, legal counsel is not cheap, right? And many startups cannot afford it, especially, that early on. So what are some of the hacks, right? And how should we start thinking about governance when we are building
legal advice is not cheap. Let me just say this on a lighter note. My father says that every human being should have 4 friends, 4 busy friends. A doctor, when you are sick, you go to the doctor. Someone called Ura, like maybe Wachi Ura, so that you get You see, a pastor who will pray for you. And the last one is a lawyer who would advise you how to swerve the police and all those things, right? It is not always that you go to a lawyer and the person will demand money. Yeah. Unless you only go to people when you need help. There are some people, when you see hello, you know that the month is due. So if I see you in that light, anytime I see hello, I think you are coming for money.
Yeah.
I'll never answer your call. If you are very, 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 very enterprising, there are certain very strategic friendships or networks you should have. It's not every time that then lawyers will be rich. Every call you make, you charge. People will call you, and they have this phrase, I want to pick your brain.
Yes. Yes. They get free advice.
Yes. He wants to pick your brain. Someone picking your brain, how do you charge? You see? So you have a lawyer that you can talk to. I have this small problem. Can you help me? Of course, you see it as small. He doesn't see it as small, but he will not charge you. Mm-hmm. So those things are very important.
So the trick is to at least make some lawyer friends very early on.
Yes.
Right?
It's not every time that you should be thinking that since you are a small startup, you don't need a lawyer because you can't afford. I'm not sure Apple started like it is now. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that those brands that you are seeing paying huge sums of money to lawyers now started with lawyers who were being paid huge sums of money. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are some people who, I don't know if they have 3 eyes. They see the startup, they see the way you address the things that are coming from your head. They see that, if I do this for free, 3 years' time, it's a big company, you will pay. Yes, we are human beings. We are moved by interest.
And Stephen, I must say, sometimes getting a lawyer, even in the beginning, to help you is far cheaper than when you find yourself in the hole. Because there, you're going for a lawyer. Oh, my goodness. You would have to pay for legal fees. Mm-hmm. If the matter has to proceed to court, you are paying for your filing fees. You are paying for some may even charge you when they are going to court. So it becomes even rather expensive. Yeah. So wouldn't you rather get a lawyer who probably understands that you are a startup? You pay him if he has to take money. You pay him the little. You can even go into a payment plan with the lawyer, pay him the little for him to help you with all the compliance issues. And then, in the future, it would get better than waiting and when the issues, when you've been sued, when there are lots of problems, then you go for a lawyer, it will be rather expensive.
Yeah.
I'd like to add that you said something that when you're a startup, you have other priorities, and getting a lawyer at that point is not. But I think it should be a priority. So the mindset has to change, because as Jasmine said, you see, I always say this: when you look, for example, when you are entering into a contract with someone else, you would maybe the person is supposed to do something for you. You are also supposed to do something in return. They bring the contract, you open it, and then you look at it. You can see that, okay, what we agreed to do is in the contract. But there are so many other things that have effect that you would not know. Or you may think you are reading simple English, but it looks like English, but in law, it may have a different meaning. So you realize that for people who don't take lawyers in the beginning, when there's trouble, at that point, you don't have a choice. You have to do everything to make sure you get out of that situation. And it's going to be the maybe 10,000 CDs you should have paid that you didn't want to pay. You end up paying about 1 million CDs. And I'm not even exaggerating.
And Alberta, I must say, there are even lay people who go online and pick templates of what they think is an agreement.
Yeah.
And they take everything, as you say, and probably that agreement is an agreement that works in a jurisdiction like in Korea. And you have used the applicable law of Korea when you are in Ghana, and you can see the mistakes. And it is wrong. I mean, we were taught that a layperson cannot draft a legal instrument, a legal document. So it's totally wrong, and that is something common. You see lay people going to pick NDA, non-disclosure agreements from the internet, and you can see they themselves don't even understand.
Yeah.
Jasmine, this happened to me a few years ago. I was reviewing a contract. When you go into an app, the terms and conditions that we all don't read. I was supposed to review something like that. So I reviewed the document. It was about 72 pages. And then I started reviewing. I got to like page 50-something. Then I see a country I didn't even know if it was a town or it was whatever. And this is a Ghanaian company. So I see the country and I note it down. Then I go to another page and I see the same thing. So I go on Google and I realize it's a country I have never heard before. And their contract is going to be governed by that country. So you can guess what they did. They went to the internet, they downloaded. And in fact, I just took a line from the contract, typed it on the internet, and I was able to trace where they downloaded it from.
Goodness.
So assuming they didn't bring it to the lawyers to review, they sign it, and then something happens, and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Probably be
Then
going
you
to
bring
Korea.
it to us, and you expect us to do magic. And at that point, it's going to be very difficult.
No,
So,
this is very, very interesting to learn, right? I guess what I'm getting out of this conversation so far is there's no better time to have a lawyer than the moment you decide to start your company. And so if you didn't think that it's important to get some kind of legal counsel or at least have a lawyer friend, this is your...
I'm sure we'll have friends today.
Yes. So, guys, there are quite a number of lawyers in the room today. So, you need to sharpen your networking skills. But I think we can move on to regulations and compliance, right? For starters, we really want to understand what are the basic compliance requirements for startups in Ghana.
Okay. Firstly, it depends on the sector your company finds itself. So there are sector-specific compliance that you may have to also, take a look at. But the general ones is that once you are a company, I think the first 18 months, that is when you are not required by law to file annual returns for ORC to know that your company still exists. Because there are people who have registered companies that are waiting for their parties to come to power. Yes, they register it and then wait that, now the person who is there may not give me anything. Maybe 4 or 8 years time you will come. But every company is supposed to be what we call a going concern. Every time that we should know, ORC has to know that the company is working. And so every year you are required to file what we call annual returns. So depending on the strength of the company, now we have 3 different levels. there is the small company, there is a medium, and then the major companies. So the small company would only have to go to its auditor and say that I want to file my annual returns. The auditor will give you, now you are not required to have a full statement of account if you are a small company. So the auditor will give you a letter that states that you are a going concern. These are the assets you've acquired or you have at this time. These are the liabilities. Balance it. Add it to a form. A form we all fill. Yes, your secretary can fill, your lawyer can fill. You just take it to ORC and they register it. Then we know that you are a going concern. That is what some people call re-registration.
Okay.
If you are a sole proprietor, every year, I think now is 57 or 47 cedis. Every year, if you actually went through the process to register and the number you used to do the registration is still available, you will see that when the time is due, they will send you a text message that your registration documents have to be re-registered. So you go through that one, you can even sit at the comfort of your home. I've forgotten the short code. You just do it and then you register. That is very basic. The second one is that, of course, some people don't do, but it's basic. Once you are a company that is a going concern, there are two things involved. Either you are making profit or you are not. Mm-hmm. If you are making profit, you are supposed to declare the profits you are making. Mm-hmm. And that is where GRA will come and say that, give me mine. So you pay tax. Yes. Mm-hmm. So you have to pay tax. Whether it's income tax, it's corporate tax, or whatever, you have to pay. If you are a company that has employees, it is a basic law in Ghana that you pay for their pension because one day that person has to retire and the person has to get something from the pension contributions that employers make. And so you are supposed to register with SNIT before you can even pay the SNIT contributions of your employees. So most people are not paying because they have not registered with SNIT, and those who are working for them are not complaining. Every day for the thief, one day for the master. It's together. So that is also supposed to be done. If you are a company who thinks or desires to have contracts from the government through what we call competitive tendering, sole sourcing, and all, restrictive tendering and all those things, then you are supposed to register with PPP, public procurement, PPA, Public Procurement Authority. You have to register with them. And I think the fintech is regulated by Bank of Ghana. Yes. Bank of Ghana has to give you some license. And so there are some compliance that you're supposed to go through. And if you have a foreign element, there's what we call GIPC, Ghana Investment Promotion Center. Okay. Of course, it's quite expensive, but it comes with some advantages when you register with them. You renew it. I think these are the basic ones. The rest, I cannot really talk about them because it may be industry-specific compliance that is supposed to.
And talking about industry specificity, can we talk more about tech startups? Because, of course, we have a bias towards tech startups. A lot of our founders are hacking solutions with tech, right? Are there any specific regulations that digital startups or tech startups need to be aware of, especially if they're operating here in Ghana?
Yeah, so the techs still may also fall within specific sectors. There are some techs, like those that we use to transfer money. You are financial tech.
Yes.
So definitely you are going to Bank of Ghana. Mm-hmm. There are some that are only giving information. It's not every startup or every tech startup that is supposed to have an industry-specific registration. Not all of them. There are some that you are supposed to go to the Ministry of Communications or NITA to find out. For me, I even say that, to be on the safer side, I don't like trouble. To be on the safer side, when you see that your business relates to this XYZ authority or company or agency of government, just walk in there. They will not take any money. Ask questions. I do this XYZ. Am I supposed to do any registration as far as that is concerned? That's if you don't want to talk to a lawyer. I'm not here to do adverts, but it is important. Yes, there's self-help and there's professional help. If you want to do self-help, you just go to Google and then, for example, you want to know where NITA is. You just type, where is NITA? And then it will take you there.
Data
You just go,
Protection
you
Agency.
ask. Yes. And you get all those things sorted
So
out.
I guess the most important thing here is that depending on your industry, there might be certain specific regulations
Yes.
that are guiding your industry. And so you need to take the step to find out what you need to do to stay within the remits of the
Otherwise,
of the
one
law.
day they'll find you.
Yes,
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
But moving on to talk about intellectual property, right? Then again, most startups don't think about IP, in the early stages. Again, because you have to think about surviving, right? So, like, what steps can we begin to take, in the very early stages of our startups to protect our companies when it comes to our intellectual properties and things of that nature?
I think when it comes to intellectual properties, the first thing when two people or a group of people come together to start up a business, I would usually say is even before you go into the IP, intellectual properties, your non-disclosure agreement, because that protects whatever information, whatever contribution, whatever ideas any of the parties will be coming with. Now, once that is done, you set up a business name that must be protected. You have trademarks, you have logos, you have patents. These must be protected under even the Copyright Act. It can be protected over there. You can have those names, logos, trademarks registered, so that if for any reason anyone uses it, you can tell the whole world, the whole world can see that, yes, these are registered, they are solely for your use and cannot be used by any other without your consent. So trademarks, logos, patent, very important, because those things represent who the company is. I mean, when you see them, you can identify the company by those. And so they are very important. We have a lot of legal issues relating to the breach of intellectual property. And so I think it is important, every startup, as you think about even the business name in itself needs to be registered. So anyone, you can have someone sue that I have registered my name under if it's sole proprietorship or even if it's under, and someone else is using the name. I mean, you could get, especially if it's a company that has money, you could actually get some damages for that. So it is
even if what they're doing is totally different from what you are doing.
Yeah. Even if it has nothing to do with the product. The name is important because then it gets people confused. You see, someone may come deal with you thinking that he's coming to deal with an IT product, but in essence, he's dealing with some biscuits or something. So it's very important.
Yes. So you see, we have people here who are older than me and people who are also younger than me. How many of you have heard someone naming his son Judas? How many? How many people are called Judas? Because of the historical antecedent, people associate some bad things to that name. So, of course, some people are Judas, but not a lot of them. Even if you are Judas here, when I ask you to raise your hand, it will be difficult for you to say you are Judas, right? But there are some names that we will not even call you want to raise your hand because it is associated with something very good, very nice. And so people want to associate with things that will benefit them. So if you have registered a name or let me say a business name, and it has a very good and appealing, I don't know how to say it, it makes business sense. That is where people try to pass it off. So you see that there's a case where someone's biscuit was, is it Pobisco or something like that? Say, oh, if I say Pobisco or Pobis, it will be obvious. My biscuit is Nobisco or something like that. Everything shows that all of them are cocoa, and it means that you knew that if you use that name, people may think that it's associated with the first one. You see, when we were kids, there was this matches box, black cat. And you see a black cat on it. And then someone also brought a white cat. A matches box with white cat. And it was called White Cat Matches Box or Matches or something like that. I only got to know in law school that the one who did the white cat was sued. It's because you realize that people were buying the black cat.
Yeah.
So how many people will go and buy matches and say that I want the one with the black cat? You say the cat. White or black is a cat.
It's a cat.
You see, that is why you are supposed to protect your name with all your strength.
Yeah.
It's very important. People also think that when we talk about intellectual property, only musicians are supposed to be worried about it. Shatawale should shout about it.
Yeah.
But they don't know that even you, the tech guys, intellectual property is the fruit of the mind. There are some things that you will bring out that will be very new, innovative, and it cannot be seen or done by the ordinary person. You don't have to take it for granted. It is the fruit of your mind. If you have the advantage, register it. Immediately you see someone using it, you just say hallelujah. Yes, because you go to court, you will get damages. There's even something called delivery app. If it is something that can be brought, the court will order the person to bring all of them for you to burn it. So it's important.
And talking about the points you made about, even you were wondering why it is you still have to protect it, even if you are doing, maybe someone has a name similar to yours and they're doing something totally different. Sometimes some companies have goodwill over a period of time. So, for example, ALX, we know what you do, right? And someone can also use the name ALX, but then when you go into it, the person's defense will be that we are not into startups, we are into something else. But you know that because you have that goodwill, anyone hearing ALX would associate it with you.
Yeah.
And some people, the goodwill may be so great to the extent that they think anything ALX is good. So even if they know it is something outside what you do, once ALX is a great company and they do good stuff,
Go for it.
once it is, I hear ALX and I think that it is from them, I would patronize it. And a lot of companies start with something and over the years they branch into other things. So it's not strange that someone would still believe that it is or it's associated with the company. So it's very important that you protect your intellectual property. Yeah.
I mean, I think we definitely need a part 2 of this conversation because I have so many more questions that I don't think time will allow for us to dive into. But maybe we can pivot to talk a little bit about investments, right? And I know a lot of the startups, they get excited when they hear investments because they hear money, right? Maybe the simple question is, if you're a startup, let me position the question this way. Are you able to raise money as a startup if you are not legally registered? Let's say you meet somebody in an elevator and then tell them about your business, elevator pitch, like, wow, here's $1 million, go and cash it and use it to scale your business. Are you able to actively look for money when you have not legally registered your business?
That is very difficult because an investor who is willing to invest in your business is taking a big risk. And so the first thing that comes into his mind, he suddenly changes from an investor to a detective he needs to investigate who he's going to do business with. And so you would see such an investor at the office of the Registrar General, checking whether you are really a company, whether you are registered, what are your objects, the object of business. Because you see that people register that they are selling, shall I say, plastic, they import or they export plastic containers, but in actual sense, they are selling biscuits. So they need to check to make sure that there's nothing dodgy. They need to see what you are even bringing in terms of what capital you have. So there's a lot of due diligence done. I know for a fact that even with banks, for banks to even give you a loan to start up with, if you appear before them as a sole proprietorship, they would usually not give it to you, especially because they can't trust you. I mean, that's a business, they don't even trust if you have the assets for them to rely on, except probably you can give them a good property worth so much as a collateral, and then they would willingly give that to you. So many of them will tell you to try and change the sole proprietorship into a company limited by shares. So, I mean, an investor would look into whether you are capable of paying. Have you even started the business? How little is it? Are you up to date with your tax responsibilities? Are you up to date with even your employment, your employees? Are you compliant with their SNITs? Do you have the best practices as you have employees? A lot of things. So it's not that easy. And it will be very difficult for an investor to see you as just a startup and decide to put millions into your business. It would only take a miracle for that to happen. And
I can agree. I think any serious investor will at least require that you're a legal entity before they put money into you.
Let me defend the voiceless. Those who have not started yet.
Yes.
And when you meet them, you say everything they hear. Like all the ideas are in their heads. You see, I've not practiced law for a long time, but I know that there are two different types of investors. The one that Jasmine just narrated, the person who wants to know how you have started, where you've got into. And there are some people who have money and are looking for ideas to invest into. You can't meet that person and say everything they hear. You see, that's why you need a business plan. You put it down. Like I said when we started, even the devil does not know the intentions of man until he speaks. And so whatever you think they hear, you put it on paper. People want you to appear as candid as possible. If you underestimate, they'll see you as a very, very, very untruthful person. If you exaggerate, they will see you as someone who only wants their money and will not do the job. You see? So try and be as realistic as possible. Have a business plan or what people call proposal. When you meet that person and the person is asking you questions, you can be very candid with the person that, see, I am now trying to start. This is my idea. I just need money to invest in it. If the person is the first type that Jasmine has just educated us on, the person will pass you by. But if the person is the one I am praying for that he meets you, he will sit you down and listen to get more, explanation as to whether, and you know, like I said, there are some people who have three eyes. The third one we can't see here. It may be in their brain. They meet you and then they say that their spirit is connecting with yours. It's not spirit. You have convinced him with words. See, so it's very important. There are two investors. The one who is doing all the due diligence and all that, and the one who is fishing for ideas. So if you have ideas and you have not started, all hope is all lost.
Yeah.
That man is still looking for you, and I think you should put it on paper. You meet him one day.
All right. That's a very good point, actually. So moving into my last question before I take the last round of comments, right? and this will be around incorporating abroad, right? For startups that are looking to scale, right? Here in Ghana, most of our top startups, we do hear, oh, they're incorporated in Delaware or in Mauritius or somewhere like that. And for those of us in the room that might not be familiar with that kind of concept, right? What are the pros and cons of incorporating abroad? And why would a startup incorporate in Delaware and not just focus on being here in Ghana?
In Ghana, most of the big companies that you see operating here but not registered here as companies are operating what we call external companies, a liaison office. They have offices here that are registered with ORC. I nearly mentioned
I know.
ORC as external companies. So they have just an office here and they are operating. If you are weightier as those ones, you can adopt that. Because re-registering another company somewhere else may take more than you may be able to handle. And so that can be one of the vehicles you can use legally to do that. Otherwise, you would have to resort to consultants, independent contractors. Because I know some of the companies, Abbott.
Yes.
Abbott is not in Ghana, but he has people in Ghana who are working for it, and they do all the things they want to do, and it's legal.
No, but I guess what I want to understand is, so for instance, if you take a platform like Netflix, I don't know if Netflix is registered in Ghana, but I do. I have a Netflix account and I watch Netflix. Is that legal?
Yes. You know, Netflix is not operating from here. They have the license to air whatever they are airing. That is why when you register and you are making the payment, you don't pay CDs.
Yeah.
I mean, fair enough.
So they have other fintech companies that are incorporated into their
and so a company like Netflix will not necessarily need to engage the law in Ghana to have paying customers and consumers in Ghana.
Yes, because it's not operating here.
Yeah.
It is
So I guess that's what I want to understand, because a lot of our startups are tech startups.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And so we want to know how we can begin to think about expansions without necessarily having to set up legal entities in many countries, but be able to benefit from users and customers in other markets as well.
But I know some countries have some restrictions on what apps can be used. I think China has a lot of restrictions when it comes to these things.
For sure.
I think that this is something that's very subjective, in my opinion. So it depends on wherever you are going, there's a reason why you are going there. So if, for example, it is not a place where there's a market for your products, I don't think you go there. And another thing is, the law in Ghana is different from the law in any other country. That's why, as a lawyer in Ghana, I can't just get up and go to the US and say I'm a lawyer. I can only say I'm a lawyer in Ghana. I can't practice there. Even though I have gone to school here, I would still have to go to school over there so that I know the laws that govern that country. So before you go to another country, you would have to make sure that you have a knowledge of the law over there. Because, for example, in Ghana, when you are registering a company, you need to have a company secretary. There are other countries where it is not a requirement. In Ghana, you need to have 2 directors. There are other countries where it may be more than 2, or it is not a requirement. You get it?
But are you guys familiar with any examples of the advantages of setting up in another country but operating in Ghana? Could there be any advantages to doing that?
So you
or
mean,
even disadvantages? Because I know people do it.
when you say setting up in another country and operating in Ghana, it means, do you mean the country is incorporated? I mean, the company is incorporated in another country.
Yes.
They are not incorporated here, but they are doing business here.
I mean, sometimes they are incorporated here as well and incorporated in other places. Sometimes for them it's strategic to incorporate somewhere else, and operate from Ghana.
I think it's mainly about the markets. If you think you can thrive there, why not? And the laws and the requirements of the law, whether you are capable of complying with them. Because, for example, in Ghana, where you have a foreigner, depending on the kind of business you are doing, there are financial requirements. There's a minimum capital requirement you must bring in, as high as $1 million. So when you are going to the country, to a foreign country which has a law like Ghana, and you don't have $1 million, it won't be wise for you to go there. Mm-hmm. And the $1 million is like minimum. So if you have just $1 million, you obviously can't thrive there. And also it's about the markets mainly. Because I don't think that the mere fact that you're dealing with someone in another country means that you should go and do your incorporation there. The person is providing you with a service, or you are in partnership with the person, but probably the person is able to establish themselves there because of what they are doing. So it's basically, you have to look at what you are doing and then whether you thrive in that environment. And it's very important to know the laws that will govern you when you incorporate your company.
That's why I agree with what Alberta said. It's always important to study the environment. And the first thing is their legal regime. How do they want business to be done? If it doesn't affect your sector, then you say hallelujah and you move on. If it does, you inquire more and then you are compliant.
Right. And I'd like to add, so for the Netflix example you gave, I'm sure, like so many other platforms, before you subscribe to them, there are terms and conditions that we don't read, as I said earlier. So
it's too long.
For example, in Ghana, like the document I said I was reviewing, the 72-page document, it's an app. So when you go there, the terms and conditions would be basically the laws of Ghana because they are operating from Ghana. Yeah. But if you're in any other country, you can use it. That's why it is important that you go through the terms and conditions. I am saying it, but I personally don't read them myself.
That's so tiny.
So you can operate from anywhere, but it is the country where the company is incorporated that will govern your relationship. And also the external companies, as Prince said, I just wanted to make a clarification. So for the external company, it is not like you are not a Ghanaian company. So when you compare it with a Ghanaian company or foreigners incorporating a company in Ghana, with the external company, they just ask for the documents used to register in that country. So for example, USA, you bring your certificates of incorporation, they call it articles of association, that's your constitution. And then they register it here as sort of a branch. Okay. So you are not a Ghanaian company, you are just, doing some business here so that you can pay tax or something like that. But if you are a foreigner and then or you are Ghanaian and you want to go and register in another company as a company in that country, then you would have to go through the process that we mentioned earlier. Yeah, so that's another strategy you can use.
Thank you very much. Guys, can we give them a round of applause? I think this has been a brilliant conversation. I'm sure our live audience would agree. This has been very, very informative. And the conversation could go on and on and on. See, I have 30 more questions to ask you guys. So we definitely have to have a part 2 of this conversation. I'm sure there are a lot more questions that our startup founders in the room have for you guys. But it's been brilliant. And in essence, this is the foundations to setting up the legal structure of your startup. And I think if you are listening to this conversation, you have a good idea of what to do and what not to do when you are starting, especially in a legal sense. So this has been brilliant. My name is Stephen. I am the Entrepreneurship Development Manager here at ALX. So working with founders, helping them accelerate their market readiness. And of course, this was powered by Edfields attorneys, and looking forward to a lot more collaboration and conversation. And so, another round of applause.
Thank you.
Everybody. And so I think we will end the conversation here for today and hopefully continue a part 2 or a part 3 of this conversation. So thank you so much to you panelists. And I really enjoyed doing this. Now I've lived my dream of being a podcast host. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.